Hello, welcome one and all to episode 125 of A Stitch in Time. Today is Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. I have to say I haven't quite got used to the whole 2020 thing. I know it always takes a while before it becomes second nature and we quit writing last year's date down or saying it. I haven't reached that point yet. My name's Carol. I am Knitsnpurls on Ravelry and I am Serenity Designs on Instagram. I hesitate to mention that simply because I haven't really gotten into the whole Instagram thing despite creating an account a few months ago. So if you have friended me on there, is that even the right word? You'll probably notice there's no activity, but I do check out other people's Instagrams once in a while, so I am going to keep it, and who knows, maybe one of these days I'll get into the habit of recording now and then. I am coming to you from my home in the beautiful Fraser Valley of British Columbia, not too far east of Vancouver, where we have been experiencing some wintry weather lately. The snow has now stopped, yay. We've had sort of a gradual melt, which is a good thing because we had a lot of snow, and what often happens in this neck of the woods is we get big snow followed by a lot of rain, and that could cause problems with flooding and clogged sewer drains and such. That did not happen, although that's what it was originally predicted. So we are supposed to get some rain this afternoon. We've had actually a really nice partially sunny morning, and the city did go around yesterday, at least on our street, and I'm sure many in the area, and unclogged, removed the snow from those drains. So we should be okay even if we do get a bunch of rain. I know the east, it was their turn to get some snow over the weekend. I think you have some more coming, so hope it's not too bad where you are. I have a finished project to show you this week, and I also have some new works in progress that I'm very excited about. But first, I just want to take a minute to talk about last week's finished project, my Granito. This is a sweater by Joji Locatelli, and if you missed last week's episode, I showed it off and expressed some concerns over the way it fit. It did not spring back very well after blocking. It is made out of superwash yarn, Malabrigo Arroyo. I've used it successfully in the past for a sweater and had no problem with it springing back. This time it stayed stretched out, and I just found the sweater overall just wider than I really liked. So I heard back from a number of you with some suggestions of what I might do to either help it come back or to reinforce the shoulders to keep them from stretching. I really appreciate all your suggestions. What I did do is re-soak it, and I put it into the washer in a lingerie bag, spun it out, and then I put it in the dryer that way with a couple of towels to help absorb some of the moisture. And I took it out while it was still slightly damp and laid it out flat. And that really did help to bring all the stitches back together. And so the sleeves are now the correct length. Everything definitely has tightened in a little bit. But the bottom line is it's still bigger than I'm comfortable wearing. And I think what it comes down to is I should have made the smallest size. And if I had these lines here, would have been in closer to my body, and the sleeves would have sat higher on my shoulders and consequently being narrower through the body. I still have a lot of kind of fabric under the arms here, the shoulders drooping. I'm just not really happy with the fit. So although I hate to do it, I am going to end up frogging this sweater and reknitting the yarn into probably into something else. I briefly considered reknitting this because I really do like the combination of yarn and pattern, but I'm not sure if I can take doing it all over again. One of the sweaters I'd originally thought about making with this yarn is, I think it's called Prairie Fire by Tin Can Knits. So that's a consideration, but for now what I'm going to do is take this apart at some point, reskein the yarn, give it a wash, and let it go back again just to its natural, get all the kinks out, go back to its natural or its original form. It's, I can't think of the right word, but to have it not all stretched out and not all crinkly. Let kind of bounce back to where it should be, and one day I will knit something else with it because I do adore this yarn. So that's sort of the last word on Granito, and it's kind of sad, you know, you never like spending all that time knitting something that you're ultimately not happy with. On the other hand, I don't see the point of leaving it in sweater form just to grow old in my drawer, never to see the light of day. So I would rather make use of the yarn once again. And I now have, I think it's 5 skeins of it, so I've got plenty to consider other projects. So that's my Granito. Thinking I'll just mention what I'm wearing. This is Birkin by Caitlin Hunter. I can't remember if I knit it last year or the year before. I made quite a few modifications through the yoke area in order to shorten the yoke and to make it fit better around this area, which was giving a lot of people a lot of trouble. And as you can see, it fits really well. I've got lots of room for movement. The details of all my alterations are noted on my project page and laid out in several past podcasts, which if I'm remembering correctly, I think I linked to in my project notes. So if you're interested in knitting this and you've heard the issues people have with the fit and you want to see how it might, how you might be able to alter it to fit you better, maybe you want to check out those project notes. Okay, I'm gonna have a sip of water. That's a lot of talking right off the bat. Well, I guess it's all talking. I just feel like I didn't have much breathing room in there. Just water for now. I've had 3 cups of tea this morning and thought I would take a break from tea. I got up quite early this morning and I'm kind of glad to be actually recording before noon today. Quite often, even despite my best intentions, I don't usually end up recording till afternoon sometime, and then that delays the whole editing and uploading process. So with any luck, you'll see this sometime late this afternoon or early evening. Okay, finished project. I was just seeing if I had brought the yarn label, but I didn't. Anyway, they are Cameron's wave socks. I'm calling them, Cameron's my husband if you are new to the podcast, and I wrapped this yarn up and put it under the Christmas tree because I did not have time to knit him a pair of socks before Christmas. So I did cast them on, I think it was on New Year's Eve or the 30th of December, and wanted to get them done as quickly as I could so that I could work on other projects guilt-free. So now I'm free to do so. So this is knit from, or these are knit from Cascade Heritage Wave, and as you can probably tell, the wave yarn kind of goes through different sections. There are 2 plies that are spun together, although, you know, I think the leftovers are right here. I'm going to check it out in a minute because I believe it might be a 4-ply yarn, but I think it's 2 plies of one color, 2 plies of another are spun together to create this marled look here, and then it just kind of unfolds without any sort of pattern repeat. It just goes from shade to shade to shade depending on which colors are intersecting. This was the first sock I knit, and I did a top down 72 stitch sock with a traditional heel flap and gusset. And when I got to the end, you can see it kind of went from light to dark. And I looked at the yarn that was left over and looked at how much yarn this had taken and tried to calculate to see if I could maybe find a light part in the skein, cast it on, and end up with a similar look to it. I did not think that was possible. I thought I would run out of the light yarn or run out of yarn too soon, so I instead just went to the other end of the skein and started with what was there and worked my way down. And as you can see, I probably could have gotten away with it. This is a little bit darker on the toe than this section, but the overall look would have been light to dark. But you know, they're completely different colors anyway, because that's how this yarn works. And so they are what they are. And I showed them to Cameron last night, and when I said that I'd briefly considered taking this one apart and knitting it backwards, he just kind of scoffed at the idea. And so that was good enough for me, because I wasn't really that serious about it. So now I will get some pictures of these, and then I will hand them over to be worn. So very happy to have those as a finished project this week. And as I always say, if you finish one pair of socks, you must cast on another. And so I did that actually this morning. That was what I began with my morning tea. It is a skein from Nymph Dye Works. I decided, because it's still winter and because this was quite a new skein, I decided to start knitting my Holiday Harmony skein that came with my 2019 Holiday Harmony mini set, and I had signed up for the exclusive full skein of yarn, and it is called Winter Comforts. I got mine in the bounce base, and features 5 stripes, and I've worked my way through all the colors so that you could see them. And I know in a previous podcast I outlined what the different colors were meant to represent. I did not bring that paper in here with me. I believe gold was for candles. This one is for snow. The blue-gray, I can't remember. I know this one was for mulled wine or cider. The purple was for soft sweaters. So, loving how those are knitting up so far. I was surprised to find that this flecked, speckled white part was narrower than the other stripes. That's something I don't think I've encountered in any other of her striped socks. I think it's a really neat thing. So it looks like it goes 2 wide stripes, 1 narrow, 2 wide, 1 narrow. So I like the way that kind of breaks up the striping, adds some interest. So enjoying those so far. So this is the first of my monthly makes for her Nymph Dye Works sort of knit along that's going on all year. I forgot to mention, although I did provide links in the show notes, that she has a Ravelry group, Nymph Dye Works Ravelry group, and in there are threads for the monthly makes program and also for her 20 in 20 knit along program for 2020. So if you are interested in participating, go over and check those out there. Let's see. Yeah, let's go with the mitts. So project that I mentioned last week as wanting to start is my Songbird Mittens. Not a great copy because my printer has run out of, or almost running out of color of ink, so it's a little bit stripy here, but that gives you the basic idea. You can see these are colorwork mittens that feature a little songbird on the front and some beautiful patterning on the thumb and the palm. And I love this lacy looking cuff. So I had acquired the yarn for these quite a while ago. It's actually the same yarn I used for my Birkin, and it's the Blacker Swan Falkland Islands wool, and it's in the 4-ply weight. So this is Pebble, and this is Diddle Dee Red. More on that later. Anyway, this red is very matches my winter jacket really well. So, and it has a little bit of gray on it too. So it's a good color match for that. So once I cast on, I didn't want to knit on anything else, and so I think it was Sunday or Saturday, I can't remember. I knit on these a lot. So you can see the cuff there. And then there's the front. You can see the bird and branch and leaves starting to take shape. And then there's the palm. And you can see where this waist yarn is the hole for where the thumb is going to be. So far they fit really, really well. I have small hands, especially short hands. So I'm hoping the length turns out okay. My gauge tends to be, it tends to take me more rows to get length as a rule. And so I'm hoping that's the case in this case, because that's the only thing I'm worried about, is that they won't be long enough, but I think that they will. So one thing I'm doing, and I don't know if this is the right way to do it or not, but it's the way I'm doing it. I really wanted the white, or not the white, but the light gray to pop on the palm, but I wanted the red to pop on the back. And so when I knit this section, I carry the red in my left hand, because I do my color work knitting one yarn in each hand. And so I put the red in the left hand to do this section, and then I switch it over and I put the gray yarn in my right hand to do this section. And it's working out well. There are stitches, sort of transition stitches along each side, and that's where I swap up where the yarns are being carried. And so it's worked out really well, because yeah, I just think this is the design I want to highlight here, but I really wanted to highlight the white on there. So those have been really fun, but as you can imagine, it's a project I need to really pay attention to, so I kind of have to do this at those times when I have the ability to just sort of concentrate on it. I can, watch a podcast or something with my tablet here, my headphones on, if Cameron's home, without it, obviously, if he's not, but I just have to be careful, because I have to always, it's not a really predictable, especially with the part that has the bird, that's not a predictable pattern by any stretch, so you really have to concentrate on where all the stitches are. So then I also began not one, but 2 sweaters. Let's talk about Zweig first. I hope that's the right way to say it. It is also by Caitlin Hunter, like the Birkin. Here's the picture from the pattern. And the yarns I'm using are from Midnight Cravings. It's the Sweet Sock in pesto and basil. Now, pesto, yeah, this is pesto. It's cream with little flecks of green, yellow. I think there's a little bit of blue sometimes. Maybe a little bit of brown. Very subtle. And then the basil is this kind of olivey green. So I have begun you begin from the top down. So I have cast on for the yoke. I'm just going to find the front and back here. Here's the front. Cast it on, do a little bit of ribbing, do some short rows to make the back a little bit higher than the front, similar to this sweater. And then you do a little bit of color work, and then you go into this lovely, lovely lace. So I'm really pleased, I have to say, with my color work with the gauge. I just feel like the tensioning has been really good. There's no real obvious puckers or anything. I haven't yet tried this on. I'm going to do that after I finish the color work, or finish the, probably finish the lace, and I'll see how it sits on me, just to make sure it's going to be okay. And I might even put it up against this sweater and see how it compares. Of course, with the lace, it will block out a fair bit, as lace always does. So anyway, loving that so far, and you would think that I wouldn't want to work on anything else, but because all these other projects were calling, I have been dividing my time between them as sort of activity and circumstance and time permit. For instance, I knit a lot on Cameron's socks while watching TV, but this, again, I need to pay a little more attention to. And then I also cast on The Weekender by Andrea Mowry. I'm sure everyone has seen this sweater. It's very popular. Let's see another picture that's a little more indicative of how it looks. Now, it has quite a similar silhouette to Granito, and I was very aware of that going into this. So I am being very deliberate about sizing, for one, and also giving it a little bit of shape. It's interesting. First of all, yarn, Cascade 220 Superwash Wave, so it's the same yarn, same idea as what I knit these socks out of, but it's a worsted weight. And so the colors kind of change as you go through. I can never get a really, oh, maybe that's better. Because I don't usually get a very accurate reading on the screen of this. This seems to pick it up pretty well. It is, it often looks very blue, but it's actually more teal in nature. And this is color 116, and they call it Deep Sea. It's actually quite a good representation. Of course, what you end up seeing in the end might be something different. This sweater is knit from the bottom up. So you do a split hem. Let's see if I can just get my needle set up here. Whenever you're working on these sweaters like this, it's hard to show it. So yeah, see that color seems to be coming up pretty well also, so that's good. You do a split hem, and you do, your front hem is shorter, about 3/4 of an inch shorter than your back hem. So then you join them together, and you actually, the outside or the right side of the sweater is, careful, I just don't want to lose stitches. The right side of the sweater is reverse stockinette, but she actually has you work it inside out. So you get to knit, 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 knit instead of purl, 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 which a lot of people prefer. Honestly, I knit, never remember if it's continental or English. I knit with my right hand and throw. I don't find purling a problem, but I do know that when I have to purl doing, I think that's the continental one, using my left hand and picking, I find that difficult too. So I can see if that's the way you knit, why you might not enjoy purling. Always find that a much more awkward motion. In any case, so you do have reverse stockinette background, and it's just separated with this slipped stitch column up the front and up the back. And what I have done is Oh dear, I just lost my beginning of round marker and a few stitches off the thing. That's the hazards of trying to show it while it's on the needles. No, I'll fix it in a second. It's not that bad. I have located waist shaping a quarter of the way in from each side of the front and 1/3 and 2/3 of the way in on the back. And that'll just bring it in a little bit at the waist and up towards the bust. Like I'll bring it in towards the waist and then go out again towards the bust. And that'll just bring it in. Just that'll give it a little bit of a curve so it won't be quite so boxy. And I'm going to be very conscious of where the sleeve, or I guess the bodice, ends up here, so that I don't end up with sleeves all the way down here. I don't mind them here. I just don't want them way down on my arm, because then that means I've got a lot of bulk out underneath my arms. Is that making sense? Anyway, happy with how that started. Now this is a great one for watching TV and stuff. We were watching, we had taped some curling over the weekend, so we watched it Sunday night and then we were watching it last night, and I was able to knit away on this and not have to pay too much attention except when I needed to do the decreases. And then also because with the slipping your stitch, you slip it on one row and then you purl it on the next row. So I am keeping a beginning of round marker that is a stitch counter, a row counter, so I just have it on row 1 for the row I have to purl, and then row 2 I very rudely cut me off. I was just saying I use a row counter and mark row 1 for the row where I have to purl this slip stitch, and row 2 when I have to slip it, and that just keeps me on track so I don't end up doing the wrong thing. What I'm reading, I finished The Tuscan Child by Rhys Bowen. It is a story set, flips back and forth between World War II and 1973. So a pilot, a Royal Air Force pilot, crashes in Tuscany and is looked after in secret by a woman from the nearby village. And then you flash forward to 1973, and this man's daughter discovers her father's connection to this woman and goes back to this small village to see if she can find out any information about what might have happened. And so that's how the story unfolds. I enjoyed it very much. And I immediately started to read, when I finished it, I immediately turned to another book that Rhys Bowen published this year called The Victory Garden. And this one takes place in World War I. And very, very, just I think I'm only on chapter 2, so very briefly it involves a young woman who's just turning 21, is on her family's estate in England and would like very much to take part in the war effort in some way, and her parents are being very protective of her, in part because they had lost their son several years before to the war. And that's as far as I've gotten. They live next door to a home that's been turned into a convalescence home. And the young woman has met one of the patients at that home, a young man from Australia. So I sense some sort of love interest there. I'll know more as I get further. But if you haven't read Rhys Bowen, I highly recommend her. They're not, some of her, especially like her mystery stories, are quite very sort of lighthearted. I know I described the Royal Spinous series as quite campy. That's how I think of them. But these are a more serious, serious sort of novel, although there's some little bit of action in the end of The Tuscan Child. Actually, both books. The one before that, what was it called? Farley Field, had a little bit of action at the end too. There's always some sort of mystery or intrigue to them. So this past week, I think it was Wednesday I recorded last, and we continued to have some snow after that, and we had predictions of freezing rain, and that's always a nightmare. As I explained at the beginning, our snow is often followed by rain, and in that transition we often have freezing rain, which is just a mess for everything. And it looks like there was a little bit overnight, would have been Saturday night? Yes, Saturday night. But then once morning came, once sunrise came, the temperature rose quite a bit, and whatever little bit of ice was on the cars and the ground quickly melted. And we've had this gradual melt with a little bit of rain mixed in, but not too bad since then. And so we'll see what follows, but certainly the majority of the snow on at least the main roads, it's all gone. I wish they would clear the sidewalks. I'm itching to go and get out for a good walk, and the sidewalks are basically impassable unless people have actually done their civic duty and shoveled the sidewalks in front of their homes. But that seems to be few and far between, and especially areas where the snowplow has just gone by and covered the sidewalks. So once those are a little more clear, I will be able to get out, because I am not walking along the road. Other than that, not lots going on. We missed curling because of the snow. We decided to cancel our game Thursday evening just because the snow was starting to fall not long before we needed to leave. And in fact, we did get, in the space of an hour, about 4 inches where I live, and I think a little more up on the hills where my sister lives, or 2 of my sisters live. And so we were quite satisfied with that decision to have canceled. I think a couple of teams did show up and play their games, but most of the women's league stayed home like we did. Cameron and I did go to the curling rink Saturday night, though. There was a bonspiel on this weekend, and they needed volunteers for things like bar duty and selling 50-50 tickets. And so Cameron had suggested we go and do bar duty together. I don't really like doing bar duty, so when I learned they also needed a 50-50 seller at that same time frame, I said, why don't I do 50-50, you do bar, and then we're there together. And so that's what we did. So we were there for, I think, 3 till 7 was our shift, and then we stayed and watched the entertainment. It was actually a women's bonspiel that Allison, my sister, and I had talked about going into, and just for various reasons ended up not playing in it. But the theme was the 80s. So there were some interesting get-ups, let's just put it that way, and then they had a lip sync contest. So some of the teams got up there and did their renditions of various 80s songs. One team did themselves up as Kiss, only they said, so you know Kiss from the 80s, this is Kiss in their 80s. And so they came walking in, or in some cases riding in on wheelchairs and walkers and canes, accompanied by another team that all had like care aid uniforms on, and proceeded to play their song for us. So that was quite funny. I thought they did the best job, but anyway, that was fun. Because of the bad weather, when I wasn't shoveling snow, which I did quite a bit, which I'm kind of glad, since I wasn't out walking, I could at least get out and get some exercise that way. And it's still enough of a novelty here that I actually don't mind shoveling snow. If I had it all winter, I would probably hate it. But as it is, I kind of enjoy it. So other than that, it gave me lots of time to be indoors, do some knitting, as you have seen. Unfortunately, my car did not like the cold weather. I didn't go anywhere for well over a week, and I went out yesterday afternoon to go for a haircut appointment, and my car wouldn't start. The battery is not completely dead. My husband works for an automotive parts company, so he took it down to the closest store and hooked it up on the tester and then on the battery charger. And he said it's borderline, so we're just going to get a new battery, so he's going to put that in for me tonight, so I will have my wheels back. And then on Friday, I'm going away for a few days with my sister Allison, who I curl with, and her husband and my mom. We're just going down to Wendover. Well, it's Wendover, Nevada, but it's also Wendover, Utah, because it is right on the border of those two states. And in the Nevada side, there are 5 casinos. In fact, it's kind of strange because one of the casinos, the casino part is in Nevada, but the parking lot is actually in Utah, where there's no gambling. So it's kind of funny. I've been there a few times before. We fly out of Bellingham, Washington, which is just, I don't know, an hour or so's drive south of here. And go Friday, so we're there Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, come home Monday. So just enough time. I like to play slot machines. I enjoy the gambling, but in small amounts. And so by the time that weekend's done, it's plenty for me. And 3 of the, well, I guess they all have nice restaurants. 3 of them are owned by the same group, and there's a really nice steakhouse and a really nice Italian restaurant that we will probably go to one night each. We get, in your little package, you get a buy one, get one coupon for an entree. And so my mom and I will share those ones, and obviously my sister and her husband will share theirs. And so we'll have 2 nice dinners while we're there. And it's always a cheap breakfast at one of the casinos or another, so we'll take part in that, and then usually just have a bit of snacky stuff during the day. So that'll be a nice little getaway. I have something good, but I forgot and left it in the kitchen, so I'm going to go run and get that, and I'll be right back. Cameron and I were in the mall this weekend, and I wanted to stop by the kitchen store. Unfortunately, this location is closing out, and I wanted to see if they had a little cheese grater that I've been wanting, little hand one. They did not, unfortunately, but while I was in there, I spotted a set of dishes that just had my name all over it. And of course it was marked down. And even though we don't really need another set of dishes, I just couldn't resist. And Cameron's like, I don't care as long as you find room in the cupboard for them. Which I did, actually, without any difficulty. So, brought these home. You can see there's a bird on it. And also, our kitchen's all blue and white. I have some, a set of like cream and sugar and serving dishes that complement this very well. And so we've adopted this set as our everyday set. I do have a set of 16 white dishes that I use, well, we have been using as our everyday set, but I got 16 because we have a large extended family and just our own family for all together. I wanted at least 10 plates that went together. So now I'm going to start using these as our everyday instead, because they're stacked on top of the other ones. See the bowls, really nice. Even has cups and saucers, which you don't see that often these days. And the truth is, I don't use a cup and saucer very often, but they're also a really nice shape. And so, of course, when we came home, the first thing I did was make a cup of tea to drink out of my new cup. Anyway, it's a little frivolous, I admit, but I just love them and am getting a lot of pleasure out of using. So that was my something good for this week. And that is the podcast for this week. My intention is to podcast next Tuesday, but that is dependent on a couple of things. One is how much I feel like recording after having been away for 4 days, because I know there'll be laundry and other things that are going to need to be done when I get home. Also, I'm not sure if my mom is going to be staying with us or with my sister. We are taking her home the following weekend, and so I expect to have her here at least a day or two before that, but that's all up in the air. So if she is here, I won't be recording, and then, in which case I will delay that until the following week. So I'll either see you next week, but if not, I'll see you the week after. So take care until then. I thank you so much, as always, for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.